Officer Tom Hayes never could have predicted how a routine patrol would forever alter the course of his life. On what seemed like an ordinary afternoon, he heard a faint, heart-wrenching cry coming from a shadowy alley. His heart raced as he discovered a newborn baby, abandoned in a trash bin. In that moment, something profound awakened within Tom. A protective instinct that drove him to make a choice that would not only transform his own life but also the life of an innocent child. Little did Tom know, that fragile infant harbored a secret so profound it would shake his world years later. As he raised the boy, Ethan, with the love and care of a devoted father, Tom crafted a life filled with affection and commitment. Yet, the past held revelations that would challenge their father-son bond in ways Tom could never have anticipated. Embark on the poignant journey of Tom and Ethan as they navigate trials, uncover startling truths, and explore the true essence of family. This is a tale that will touch your soul and make you ponder the transformative power of unconditional love. Officer Tom Hayes was strolling down a sun-dappled sidewalk, his dark blue uniform sharp against the warm afternoon light. It was a serene day in the neighborhood he patrolled, and Tom felt a deep sense of gratitude for the peace. But as he turned into a narrow alley, something caught his attention. A faint, almost imperceptible cry drifting through the air. Tom froze, his heart suddenly racing. It sounded like a baby. Following the sound, Tom's eyes darted around, scanning for the source. The cries grew louder as he approached a large metal trash bin. With trembling hands, he lifted the lid and found, nestled among discarded newspapers and food wrappers, a tiny black baby. The child's face was etched with anguish, small fists flailing in distress. Tom's breath caught in his throat as tears welled in his eyes. Gently, he lifted the baby from the trash, cradling the fragile infant close. "It's okay, little one," he whispered, pulling the child to his chest. "You're safe now." As Tom held the baby, memories of his own childhood surged back. He recalled the day his adoptive parents had brought him home, showering him with love and care. The thought of this innocent child being abandoned tore at Tom's heart. "I won't let you down," Tom promised the baby, now calming in his arms. "You deserve a chance in life just like I had." Without hesitation, Tom called for backup over the radio and headed for his patrol car. The baby needed immediate medical attention. As he drove to the hospital, Tom felt an overwhelming sense of connection to the child. He knew what it meant to be given a second chance, and he was determined to ensure this baby received the same. At the hospital, Tom paced anxiously in the waiting room, his mind racing with thoughts of the little one he had rescued. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as doctors and nurses bustled about, their faces etched with concern. Finally, a kind-faced nurse approached Tom. "Officer Hayes," she said softly, "the baby is stable now. Would you like to see him?" Tom nodded, his throat tight with emotion. He followed the nurse to a small room where the baby lay in a clear plastic crib, wrapped snugly in a soft blanket. Tom's heart swelled at the sight. "He's a fighter," the nurse said with a smile. "Do you know his name?" Tom hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Ethan," he said, the name coming to him suddenly. "His name is Ethan." As Tom gazed at little Ethan, a social worker entered the room and gently explained that once Ethan was well enough, he would be placed in a foster home. Tom felt a pang in his chest at the thought of Ethan being shuffled from one home to another. What if Tom took him in temporarily? "This is a big decision, Officer Hayes," the social worker said, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" Tom looked at Ethan's innocent face, feeling an inexplicable bond with the child. He thought of his own childhood, the love his adoptive parents had given him, and he knew he could offer the same to Ethan. Doubts crept in. Tom was single, worked long hours, and had no experience with babies. But as he watched Ethan's tiny chest rise and fall, Tom knew he couldn't let the child go. "I'm sure," Tom said firmly. "I want to give Ethan a chance just like I had." The social worker nodded with a small smile. "We'll need to do some paperwork and home visits, but if everything goes smoothly, Ethan could be in your care within a week." Tom extended his hand and gently touched Ethan's tiny fingers, which curled around his own. In that moment, Tom knew his life would never be the same. Bringing Ethan home transformed Tom's quiet apartment into a lively space filled with the cries of a newborn. He found himself immersed in a whirlwind of diapers, bottles, and sleepless nights. As he rocked Ethan in the early hours of the morning, Tom's mind drifted to his own childhood. He remembered the warmth of his adoptive mother's embrace and the pride in his father's eyes when he graduated from the police academy. Their unconditional love had shaped him, and now he wanted to give Ethan the same opportunity. "I've got you, little one," Tom whispered, gently rocking Ethan. "We're in this together." Balancing his police duties with caring for Ethan proved challenging. His partner, Officer Johnson, often found him yawning during their patrols. "Tough night?" Johnson would ask, offering coffee. Tom would nod, rubbing his tired eyes. "Teething," he'd reply. "But you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world." As weeks passed, Tom established a routine. He fed Ethan before his shift, dropped him off at a nearby daycare, and rushed home as quickly as possible. As Tom Hayes navigated his daily responsibilities, the exhaustion was real, but so was the joy he felt every time Ethan smiled at him. One evening, while bathing Ethan, the baby splashed water everywhere, laughing with pure delight. Tom couldn't help but join in the laughter, his heart swelling with love. "You are something else, kiddo," Tom said, wrapping Ethan in a fluffy towel. In that moment, Tom realized he no longer saw himself as just a temporary caretaker. He was Ethan's father, completely and irrevocably. The thought both thrilled and terrified him as he laid Ethan down for the night. Tom made a silent promise that night: "I will always be here for you, Ethan. No matter what." The decision to adopt Ethan was not made lightly. Tom spent countless nights pacing his living room, weighing the pros and cons while Ethan slept peacefully in his crib. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. One morning at the precinct, Tom shared his plans with his partner, Officer Johnson. "Are you sure about this, Tom?" Johnson asked, concern etched on his face. "Raising a black child in our neighborhood won't be easy." Tom nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I know it will be challenging, but Ethan deserves a loving home. I can give him that." As word spread, Tom faced more questions and doubts from colleagues and friends. Some worried about cultural differences. Others were concerned about the community's potential reaction. But Tom remained steadfast in his decision. At home, he looked at a photo of his adoptive parents on the mantel. He remembered their unwavering love and support, how they had given him a chance at a better life. Tears welled up as he picked up Ethan from the crib. "I was taught that love sees no color," Tom whispered to the baby. "I'll teach you the same thing, little one." With resolute determination, Tom began the adoption process. He filled out countless forms, attended parenting classes, and met with social workers. Each step came with its own challenges, but Tom faced them head-on as he prepared for the changes ahead. He transformed his guest room into a proper nursery, painting the walls a cheerful yellow and assembling a crib with his own hands. Tom hung colorful pictures of diverse families on the walls, determined to create a space where Ethan would feel represented and loved. One night, as Tom rocked Ethan to sleep, he made a solemn vow. "I promise to always honor your heritage, Ethan. We'll learn about it together. You will grow up knowing where you come from and how deeply loved you are here." As Tom carried Ethan through the front door of his home, a wave of emotion swept over him. This was it, they were officially a family now. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, but with it came an overwhelming sense of joy and purpose. "Welcome home, little guy," Tom said softly, his voice thick with emotion. He gently placed Ethan in the new crib in the nursery, pausing to marvel at how perfect the baby looked in the room Tom had carefully prepared. The yellow walls glowed warmly, and the diverse family photos seemed to smile at them. Tom's daily routine underwent a complete transformation. Nights became a cycle of feedings and diaper changes, leaving him bleary-eyed but filled with a profound sense of fulfillment. He learned to balance his police duties with fatherhood, relying on a supportive network of colleagues and neighbors when needed. Small changes appeared throughout the house. Baby-proofing became Tom's new hobby, with corner protectors and cabinet locks popping up everywhere. The once immaculate living room now overflowed with colorful toys and soft blankets. As the days passed, Tom found himself falling more deeply in love with Ethan. He cherished the quiet moments when Ethan held his finger with tiny hands or the way the baby's face lit up with a toothless grin when Tom entered the room. One night, as Tom sat in the rocking chair, cradling Ethan after a feeding, he felt an overwhelming sense of connection. Ethan's usually lively dark eyes were heavy with sleep as he nestled against Tom's chest. Tom gently stroked the baby's soft curls, marveling at the trust and love radiating from this small being. "I never knew I could love someone so much," Tom whispered, his heart swelling with emotion. "We're in this together, Ethan. Always." As Ethan grew from a tiny baby into a curious child, Tom's heart brimmed with pride and love. The little boy's infectious laughter filled their home, and his bright eyes sparkled with wonder at the world around him. Tom cherished every milestone, from Ethan's wobbly first steps to his tentative first words. However, as they ventured into their predominantly white neighborhood, Tom began to notice subtle shifts in how some people interacted with them. While many neighbors would smile warmly and make an effort to engage with Ethan, Others averted their eyes or exchanged whispered comments behind their hands on sunny afternoons. One day Tom took Ethan to the local playground. As they approached, he overheard a mother cautioning her child to be careful around that little boy. The sting of her words cut deep, and Tom instinctively pulled Ethan closer, shielding him with a protective arm. Yet, amidst the tension, an unexpected source of support emerged. Mrs. Johnson, the elderly neighbor. She frequently brought homemade cookies and would sit with Tom on the porch, watching Ethan play in the yard. "You're doing a wonderful job with that boy," Mrs. Johnson said one day, her voice warm and sincere. "Love is what makes a family, not the color of our skin." Tom was deeply touched by her words, though the weight of his worries remained heavy. He knew that as Ethan grew, the challenges they faced would only become more pronounced. Determined to prepare himself and Ethan for what lay ahead, Tom dove into research, devouring books on transracial adoption and joining online support groups for parents in similar situations. One night, as Tom tucked Ethan into bed, the little boy looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Daddy, thank you for everything." Tom's heart swelled with joy as he softly replied, "I'm grateful too, buddy. You've brought so much color into my life." As he kissed Ethan goodnight, Tom made a silent vow. He would do everything in his power to protect Ethan, to nurture his self-confidence, and to prepare him for the challenges that lay ahead. Though he knew the path wouldn't be easy, the love he felt for his son gave him the strength to face each day. The next day, Tom held Ethan's small hand as they walked to the local park on a warm Saturday afternoon. The sun blazed brightly, and the playground buzzed with the laughter of children. Ethan's eyes sparkled with excitement as he saw the colorful swings and slides. "Can I go play, Daddy?" Ethan asked, bouncing on his toes. Tom smiled warmly, his heart aching with pride. "Of course, buddy. Have fun and be careful." As Ethan dashed off to join the other kids, Tom found a nearby bench to watch. His heart swelled with pride as he saw his son confidently introduce himself to a group of children building a sandcastle. A friendly-looking woman sat down beside him. "What a lovely boy you have," she said with a gentle smile. Tom pointed to Ethan, who was now happily engaged in play. "That little guy in the blue shirt." The woman's eyes widened slightly, but she maintained her smile. "He's wonderful. You must be so proud." Tom nodded, grateful for her positive reaction. "I am. He's the light of my life." As they chatted, Tom noticed another father casting a disapproving glance at Ethan. The man muttered something to his wife, and together they pulled their child away from the sandcastle group. Tom's heart sank, recognizing the all-too-familiar signs of prejudice. Later, while Tom pushed Ethan on the swing, he saw the boy's forehead furrow in concentration. "Daddy," Ethan suddenly asked, "why does my skin look different from yours?" Tom's breath caught in his throat. He knew this question would come eventually, but it still caught him off guard. Slowing the swing, he knelt in front of Ethan, looking into his son's curious eyes. "Well, buddy," Tom began gently, "people come in all different colors. It's one of the things that makes the world so beautiful and special." Ethan nodded, absorbing the information. "But why don't I look like you?" Tom's heart ached with the innocent question. He struggled to find the right words, wanting to shield Ethan's innocence while also preparing him for the realities of the world. As summer turned to fall, Tom prepared Ethan for his first day of preschool. He carefully packed Ethan's backpack with colorful supplies and slipped a special note into his lunchbox. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety as they approached the cheerful building adorned with crayon artwork. "Ready for your big day, champ?" Tom asked, kneeling to straighten Ethan's collar. Ethan's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Yes, Daddy. I can't wait to make new friends." Tom smiled, masking his own anxiety. He watched as Ethan confidently walked into his classroom, then stood by the door, observing the other children and their parents. A lump formed in his throat as he noticed Ethan was the only black child in the room. Throughout the day, Tom struggled to concentrate on work, his thoughts repeatedly drifting back to Ethan. He worried about how his son was being treated. When the time came to pick up Ethan, Tom hurried to the school, his heart pounding. To his immense relief, Ethan burst out of the classroom, beaming with a colorful drawing clutched in his hand. "Daddy, look what I made," he exclaimed proudly. "That's amazing, buddy," Tom said, admiring the stick figures holding hands. "Did you have a good day?" Ethan nodded eagerly. "I made a new friend named Sarah. We played with blocks and sang songs." As days passed, Tom's worries began to ease. Ethan came home each day bubbling with stories about his new friends and the exciting things he was learning. Ms. Johnson, his teacher, always greeted Tom with a warm smile and praised Ethan's progress. Yet Tom remained vigilant. He attended every parent-teacher meeting, volunteered for class events, and made it a point to talk with Ethan daily about his experiences. He wanted to foster an open dialogue where Ethan felt comfortable sharing any concerns. The love Tom had for his son gave him the courage to face the challenges ahead, and with each passing day their bond grew stronger. The road was fraught with obstacles, but Tom was determined to give Ethan the supportive and loving environment he deserved. As the autumn leaves painted the schoolyard in vibrant hues, Tom attended Ethan's first school festival. The air buzzed with excitement, the laughter of children blending with the chatter of parents. Tom watched with pride as Ethan darted from booth to booth, his face aglow with happiness as he eagerly helped at the face-painting station. Nearby, two mothers engaged in a hushed conversation. "Did you see that little black boy in Miss Johnson's class?" one whispered. "I heard he was adopted by that police officer. It must be so challenging for both of them." Tom's hand froze mid-motion, a drop of paint splattering onto the table. A familiar knot twisted in his stomach, a sensation he hadn't felt since Ethan's first day of school. As the day wore on, Tom noticed subtler signs of prejudice. A teacher praising Ethan's athletic skills while lauding another child's intelligence, parents pulling their children away when Ethan approached to play. Each small instance weighed heavily on Tom's heart. During the class performance, Tom's eyes never left Ethan. His son sang with enthusiasm, his smile radiating pure joy. Yet an underlying anxiety gnawed at Tom. How long could this innocent happiness last in a world that might judge Ethan by the color of his skin? That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, Tom sat at his computer, a determined expression on his face. He began searching for ways to support Ethan's identity and educate him about his cultural heritage. He discovered books featuring black protagonists, looked for local cultural events, and even found online communities for transracial adoptive families. As he delved deeper into his research, Tom realized the enormity of the task ahead. It wasn't just about shielding Ethan from racism, it was about empowering him to embrace his identity and navigate a complex world. Tom knew he had much to learn, but he was committed to doing whatever it took to ensure Ethan grew up strong, proud, and resilient. On a cold night, Tom sat at his desk, the soft glow of his laptop casting shadows on his face. Ethan was asleep upstairs, his gentle snores barely audible through the baby monitor. Tom sifted through digital police files, updating the work he had brought home. As he scanned reports of missing persons, one case in particular caught his eye. It was an old case, filed years ago, but something about it made Tom lean closer to the screen, furrowing his brow as he read the details. The report had been filed by Maria Castillo, a renowned black opera singer. Tom vaguely recalled hearing about her disappearance from the headlines years ago. According to the file, Maria had reported her newborn son missing. The description made Tom's heart race, a baby with a distinct crescent-shaped birthmark on his left shoulder. Tom's mind flashed back to Ethan's bath earlier that night. He had seen that same birthmark countless times, a small crescent moon on his son's shoulder. What he had always found endearing now took on an entirely new significance. With trembling hands, Tom opened a new tab and searched for Maria Castillo. Images of a stunning woman with dark skin and soulful eyes filled the screen. In one photo, she was holding a tiny bundle, her face radiating joy. The caption read, "Opera star Maria Castillo with her newborn son, just days before her disappearance." The realization hit Tom like a punch to the gut. Ethan, his beloved son, the child he had rescued and raised as his own, was Maria Castillo's missing son. The famous singer had been searching for him all these years. Tom's mind spun. He looked at the baby monitor, watching Ethan sleep peacefully, the boy he loved more than life itself. He had a mother out there who had never stopped looking for him. Overwhelmed, Tom pushed away from his desk, his legs trembling as he walked to the window. The quiet street outside seemed surreal, as if his entire world had just turned upside down. He turned back to his desk, staring at the open file on his computer. The missing person report seemed to taunt him, daring him to make sense of it. What was he supposed to do with this information? How could he even begin to process it? With a heavy heart, Tom sank back into his chair, staring at the file. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The path forward was unclear, and Tom had no idea what to do next. Tom sat at his desk, his mind spinning with the weight of his discovery. The soft glow of the computer screen cast shadows on his troubled face as he glanced at the baby monitor, watching Ethan's chest rise and fall peacefully in sleep. "What am I going to do?" Tom whispered to himself, running a hand through his hair. The implications of this revelation were immense. Ethan, the child he had rescued from a dumpster and raised as his own, had a biological mother searching for him all this time, an opera star with wealth and influence. The thought of losing Ethan to Maria Castillo, who could offer him opportunities Tom could never provide, twisted Tom's heart in anguish. The idea of parting with the child who had become his entire world filled him with dread. He paced the room, his mind racing. Part of him knew he should contact Maria immediately, it was the right thing to do. But another part of him, the part that loved Ethan fiercely as a father, wanted to protect what they had built together. Tom stopped at the window, staring out at the quiet street. What would happen to his small family if he made that call? Would Ethan be taken away? Tom would lose the child who had become his whole universe. With a heavy sigh, Tom returned to his desk, looking at the file one last time before closing it. For now, he decided to keep this information to himself. He needed time to think, to find the best way forward for Ethan. As he shut down his computer, he felt the weight of his secret settle heavily on his shoulders. He didn't know what the future held, but he was certain of one thing. He would do whatever it took to protect Ethan's happiness. As days passed, Tom found himself increasingly consumed by the secret he was keeping. The knowledge of Ethan's true identity weighed heavily on his mind, making it difficult to focus on the present moments with his son. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Ethan excitedly talked about his day at school. Tom nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere, mulling over the implications of contacting Maria Castillo. "Dad." Ethan's voice cut through Tom's distraction. "Are you listening?" Tom blinked, realizing he had missed most of what Ethan had said. "Sorry, buddy. What were you talking about?" Ethan's smile faltered. "Never mind," he murmured, pushing his peas around his plate. Tom felt a pang of guilt. He reached out to ruffle Ethan's hair, but the boy flinched away. The small rejection stung, and Tom knew he needed to do better. As the weeks went by, Tom's internal turmoil grew. He found himself losing focus during their bedtime stories, forgetting to ask about Ethan's art projects, and missing the small moments that had once been the highlight of his day. Ethan, perceptive and sensitive, began to withdraw. He stopped sharing as much about his day and spent more time quietly drawing in his room instead of playing with Tom. On a Saturday afternoon, Tom suggested they go to the park, hoping to reconnect. But as they walked together, Tom's mind wandered, consumed by thoughts of Maria and what she might be like. He barely noticed when Ethan excitedly tried to show him a cool rock he had found. "Dad, look," Ethan said, holding out the rock. "That's nice," Tom responded distractedly, his eyes unfocused. Ethan's face fell. He dropped the rock and walked ahead, his small shoulders slumped. Tom realized his mistake too late. He ran to catch up with Ethan, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to ignore you." "It's okay." "It's fine," Ethan shrugged, his voice devoid of enthusiasm. "You always apologize lately." The words hit Tom like a punch to the gut. He watched helplessly as Ethan climbed onto a swing, not asking for a push as he used to. Tom sat on a nearby bench, his heart heavy with the knowledge that his internal struggle was hurting the person he loved most. Across town, Maria Castillo stood by the window of her luxurious penthouse, gazing out at the twinkling city lights below. Her fingers traced the outline of a small, faded photograph she kept close to her heart. It was the only photo she had of her son, a grainy ultrasound image capturing him before he was born. Tears welled up in her eyes as she recalled the day she made the hardest decision of her life. She was young, frightened, and at the peak of her opera career. The thought of a child derailing everything she had worked so hard for terrified her. "I'm so sorry, my little one," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Her mind drifted back to that fateful day when she had just finished a triumphant performance at the Metropolitan Opera and discovered she was pregnant. The news sent her into a panic. Her agent warned her about potential scandal, damage to her reputation, and the impact on her career. "Think about your future, Maria," he had said. "A child will ruin everything you've built." Those words echoed in her mind for months. As her belly grew and her heart conflicted, she hid her pregnancy from the public, wearing loose dresses and canceling appearances. But with every kick and movement, she felt a deeper connection to the life growing inside her. The day Maria gave birth was both beautiful and heartbreaking. She held her baby only for a fleeting moment, imprinting his tiny face in her memory before she had to let him go. The anguish of that separation never left her. Years later, despite Maria's rising fame and adoration from millions, an unfillable void remained in her heart. Each time she saw a child on the street or heard the laughter of a baby, she wondered about her own son. Was he happy? Was he loved? Did he know about her? The guilt was a constant shadow, reminding her of the choice she had made, her career over her child. The weight of that decision was nearly unbearable. Maria had hired private investigators, scoured adoption records, and even considered publicizing her story, hoping to find her son. But fear always held her back. Fear of rejection, fear of public backlash, and fear of disrupting her child's life if he was already happy and settled somewhere. The uncertainty gnawed at her relentlessly. Meanwhile, Tom paced restlessly in his living room, his heart racing. He checked the clock for the 100th time that night. Ethan was sound asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware of the turmoil in his father's mind. What's the right thing to do? Tom whispered to himself, trying to muster courage. His hand trembled as he dialed the number he had memorized from Maria Donovan's missing person report. As the phone rang, Tom's mind swirled with doubts. What if Maria wanted to take Ethan away? What if this destroyed everything they had built together? Yet, deep down, he knew Ethan deserved to know the truth about his origins. Hello? A cautious female voice answered. Tom's throat went dry. Ms. Donovan, this is Officer Tom Hayes. I have some information about your son. A sharp intake of breath came from the other end. My son? Have you found him? Maria's voice quivered with a mix of hope and fear. Yes, Tom said softly. I believe we should meet in a private place to discuss this. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe the following afternoon. Tom hung up the phone, feeling a blend of relief and trepidation. He went to check on Ethan, watching the boy sleep peacefully. Tears welled in Tom's eyes as he gently stroked Ethan's curly hair. I promise, buddy, he whispered. No matter what happens, I will always be here for you. The next day, Tom arrived early at the cafe, selecting a secluded corner table and waiting nervously. His coffee went cold as he fidgeted. When Maria walked in, he recognized her immediately from the photos he had seen. She looked elegant but weary, her eyes scanning the room anxiously. Tom stood and waved her over. As Maria approached, he could see the hope and fear shining in her eyes. She sat down across from him, her hands tightly clasped. Officer Hayes, she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Please tell me what you know about my son. Tom took a deep breath, his heart pounding. This moment had the power to change everything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photo of Ethan, sliding it across the table to Maria. Ms. Donovan, he said gently, I believe this is your son. Maria's hand trembled as she took the photo. Her eyes widened and she gasped softly. Tears streamed down her face as she traced Ethan's features with her finger. It's him, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I would recognize that birthmark anywhere. My baby. Tom watched her intently, his own heart aching as he saw the love and pain in Maria's eyes. It made his own fears surface. He's a wonderful boy, Tom said softly. Smart, kind, and full of life. Maria looked at Tom, tears brimming in her eyes. Thank you, she said, her voice barely audible. Thank you for saving him, for loving him when I couldn't. Tom nodded, his throat tight. Can you tell me what happened? Why did you leave him? Maria took a deep breath. I was young, terrified, and at the height of my career. I thought I was doing what was best for him, but I've regretted it every single day since then. She wiped her tears, trying to compose herself. I've been searching for him for years. I never lost hope. Tom felt a wave of sympathy and protectiveness. Ethan had no idea of the truth. He believed Tom was his only father. Maria nodded, her eyes reflecting her understanding. Of course, I don't want to disrupt his life. But I would like to meet him, even if he doesn't know who I am at first. Tom hesitated, torn between his love for Ethan and the boy's right to know his biological mother. We need to approach this with great care, he said slowly. Ethan's well-being must come first. Absolutely, Maria agreed quickly. I just want to see that he's okay. We can take it as slowly as needed. Tom could see the sincerity in Maria's eyes. Despite his fears, he knew this was the right thing to do for Ethan. All right, he said softly. We'll find a way for you to meet him, but we'll do it on Ethan's terms at his pace. Maria's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for being the father he needed. Tom and Maria sat in silence for a moment, both absorbing the gravity of the situation. The small cafe around them buzzed with life, but they were in their own world, focused on the future of the little boy who had brought them together. Maria spoke first, her voice soft but resolute. I want to do this right. Ethan's happiness is what matters most. Tom nodded, relieved. He had been worried that Maria might demand immediate recognition, but her words reassured him. I'm glad you feel that way, he said. Ethan is a sensitive child. We need to be careful. They spent the next hour discussing various ways to introduce Maria into Ethan's life. Tom suggested that Maria could start by volunteering at Ethan's school, allowing her to observe him from a distance. Maria agreed, her eyes lighting up at the thought. Maybe later we could arrange a more direct meeting. Perhaps at the park where Ethan and I go. You could be there by chance and we could start a conversation. Maria nodded eagerly. That sounds perfect. I could bring my dog. Kids always love dogs, right? Tom couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. Ethan adores dogs. That's a great idea. As they continued planning, Tom felt a whirlwind of emotions inside him. He was happy that Ethan would have the chance to know his biological mother, but a part of him feared losing the special bond he shared with his son. Maria seemed to sense his discomfort. She reached across the table and gently squeezed his hand. Tom, I want you to know I'm not here to replace you. You're Ethan's father in every way that matters. I just hope to be a positive addition to his life. A lump formed in Tom's throat. He squeezed her hand back, grateful for her understanding. Thank you, Maria. That means a lot. As their meeting drew to a close, a new understanding had been reached between them. Maria hugged Tom tightly. Thank you for giving me this chance, she whispered. Tom left the cafe with a swirl of emotions. He was apprehensive about the changes to come but also hopeful. He knew Ethan's world was about to expand in ways he couldn't have imagined, and he was determined to guide his son through it with all the love and support he could offer. Back in the garage, Tom's mind was still processing his meeting with Maria. As he stepped out of the car, he took a deep breath, trying to steady himself before facing Ethan. Inside, he found Ethan sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by colorful building blocks. The boy's face lit up when he saw Tom. Dad, look what I built, Ethan exclaimed. Tom forced a smile, kneeling beside his son. Wow, buddy, that's impressive. As they played together, Tom couldn't help but notice Ethan's occasional curious glances. The boy was perceptive and Tom knew he sensed that something was off. During dinner, Ethan pushed his peas around his plate, furrowing his brow in thought. Dad, are you okay? He finally asked, his voice tinged with concern. Tom's heart ached. He reached across the table and gently squeezed Ethan's small hand. I'm fine, buddy. Just have some adult things on my mind. Ethan nodded, but his eyes held a trace of worry. Tom felt a pang of guilt for causing his son any distress. After tucking Ethan into bed, Tom sat on the edge of the mattress, running his fingers through the boy's curly hair. Ethan looked up at him with those big, trusting eyes, and Tom felt his resolve strengthen. Ethan, he said softly, there's something important I need to talk to you about, but it's late now. How about we have a special breakfast tomorrow morning and talk then? Ethan's eyes widened with curiosity and a hint of excitement. Okay, Dad. Can we have pancakes? Tom laughed, feeling some of the tension leave his body. You bet. Pancakes it is. As Tom closed Ethan's bedroom door, he leaned against the wall with a heavy heart. He knew the conversation ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to be honest with his son. Ethan deserved to know the truth about his past, and Tom would be there to support him through whatever emotions might arise. Tom spent the rest of the night preparing for their morning talk, flipping through old photo albums and reminiscing about the day he first brought Ethan home. As he traced the outline of Ethan's face in one of the pictures, Tom made a silent promise to always put his son's happiness first, no matter what changes lay ahead. The next morning, Tom woke early to prepare a special breakfast for Ethan. The kitchen filled with the sweet aroma of pancakes as he carefully stacked them on a plate, drizzling a generous amount of maple syrup. When Ethan shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, Tom's heart swelled with love and a touch of anxiety. Good morning, buddy, he said, ruffling Ethan's hair. Ready for our pancake feast? Ethan's face brightened as he climbed into his chair. Yes, thank you, Dad. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Tom cleared his throat. Ethan, remember I said we needed to talk about something important? Ethan nodded, his mouth full of pancake. Tom took a deep breath. Well, it's about your biological mother. We found out who she is. Ethan's fork clattered onto his plate. His eyes widened, a mix of confusion and surprise swirling within them. My real mom? Tom reached across the table, taking Ethan's small hand in his. I'm your real father, Ethan. Nothing will ever change that. But yes, we have found your biological mother. Ethan's brow furrowed as he tried to process this information. But why didn't she want me before? Tom's heart ached at the hurt in Ethan's voice. It's complicated, buddy. She made a very difficult choice when you were born, but she's been searching for you ever since. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. Does this mean I have to leave you? No, absolutely not, Tom said firmly, moving to kneel beside Ethan's chair. He wrapped his arms around his son. I'm your dad and I always will be. Nothing will ever change the fact that I love you more than anything in this world. Ethan buried his face in Tom's shoulder, his small body shaking with sobs. Tom held him, rubbing gentle circles on his back. As Ethan's tears subsided, Tom gently pulled back to look him in the eyes. Her name is Maria. She would like to meet you, but only if you want to. There's no pressure, and I'll be with you every step of the way. Ethan sniffled, wiping his nose on the back of his hand. Can I think about it? Of course, buddy. Take all the time you need. After a moment, Ethan nodded slowly. Okay, I think I want to meet her, but I'm scared. It's okay to be scared. Tom hugged Ethan tightly. I'll be there with you no matter what. The day of the meeting arrived, and Tom's heart raced as he drove Ethan to the tranquil park they had chosen. He glanced in the rearview mirror, noting Ethan's nervous agitation in the back seat. Are you okay, buddy? Tom asked gently. Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the passing scenery. I think so, he murmured. As they pulled into the parking lot, Tom spotted Maria sitting on a bench near a small lake. She stood as they approached, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Tom knelt beside Ethan. Remember, I'm here with you. We can leave whenever you want, okay? Ethan nodded, gripping Tom's hand tightly as they walked toward Maria. Her eyes filled with tears as she saw Ethan for the first time in years. Hello, Ethan, she said softly, her voice trembling. I'm your biological mother. Ethan looked at her, his face a mix of curiosity and confusion. Why did you leave me? He asked suddenly, his voice low but full of hurt. Maria flinched at the bluntness of his question. She knelt to Ethan's level, her eyes pleading. Oh, Ethan, I made a very difficult choice when you were born. I thought I was doing what was best for you, but I regret it every day since then. Ethan's brow furrowed, anger creeping into his voice. But why didn't you want me? Of course I wanted you, Maria said, her voice choked with emotion. I was young and scared. I thought you would have a better life with someone else. But I was wrong and I'm so sorry. Ethan took a step back, pressing against Tom's leg. But you left me alone in a trash can, he said, his voice almost a whisper. Maria's face contorted with anguish. I know, and I can never forgive myself for that. I was terrified and made a terrible mistake. I've been looking for you ever since, hoping to make things right. Despite Maria's explanations, Ethan remained distant, his small body tense with confusion and anger. Tom placed a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder, feeling the shudders running through his son's frame. In the days following the meeting, Ethan's emotions swirled like a storm inside him. He spent more time alone in his room, clutching his favorite stuffed animal and staring out the window. Tom watched helplessly as his son struggled with feelings too big for his young heart to fully understand. One night, as Tom was tucking Ethan into bed, the boy's eyes filled with tears. Dad, he whispered, his voice trembling. Why wasn't I good enough for her to keep? Tom's heart broke at the question. He sat on the edge of the bed, pulling Ethan close. Oh, buddy, he said gently, it wasn't about you not being good enough. Sometimes adults make mistakes, even big ones. But that doesn't mean you're not loved or wanted. Ethan buried his face in Tom's chest, his small body shaking with sobs. Tom held him tightly, wishing he could take away his son's pain. Meanwhile, Maria was devastated by Ethan's reaction. She paced her apartment, replaying the meeting in her mind. The image of Ethan's pain haunted her, but she refused to give up. She knew she had to find a way to show Ethan how much she cared. Dear Ethan, I know our first meeting was incredibly challenging. I want you to understand that not a single day has passed without me thinking about you. As the days went by, Maria continued to send letters. She shared stories about her life, inquired about Ethan's interests, and expressed deep regret for her past actions. She even recorded herself singing lullabies, hoping that the music might reach Ethan in a way her words could not. Tom found himself in a difficult position. He wanted to shield Ethan from further pain but also recognized the importance of allowing his son to meet his biological mother. Whenever a letter or package arrived, Tom gently informed Ethan, never pressuring him but always keeping the door open. Weeks turned into months, and Maria's unwavering determination to connect with Ethan never faltered. She continued to send letters and small gifts, each one thoughtfully chosen to demonstrate her sincere desire to know her son. One sunny afternoon, Ethan's school held a spring concert. As he stood on stage with his classmates, his eyes scanned the audience for his father's familiar face. To his surprise, he saw not only Tom but also Maria sitting a few rows back. She smiled softly and gave a small wave when their eyes met. After the performance, Ethan tugged on Tom's sleeve and whispered, "Dad, Maria is here." Tom nodded, placing a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Do you want to say hello?" Ethan hesitated but then nodded slowly. They made their way through the crowd to where Maria stood, looking nervous yet hopeful. "Hello, Ethan," Maria said gently. You sang beautifully up there. Ethan murmured a shy thank you, his gaze fixed on the floor. I brought something for you, Maria said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small, colorful package wrapped in paper. It's okay if you don't want to open it now. Ethan looked at Tom, who nodded encouragingly. With trembling fingers, Ethan unwrapped the gift to reveal a book about space exploration. His eyes widened with interest. Your dad mentioned that you love learning about space, Maria explained. I thought you might enjoy this. For the first time since their initial meeting, Ethan looked directly at Maria. Thank you, he said, his voice a little stronger this time. As they parted ways, Ethan clutched the book to his chest. That night, as Tom read a chapter to Ethan before bed, the boy's thoughts wandered back to Maria's thoughtful gift. Over the following weeks, Maria's presence became a gentle constant in Ethan's life. She attended his baseball games, cheered from the sidelines, and sent care packages filled with his favorite snacks during a school trip. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Ethan's anger began to wane. He found himself eagerly anticipating Maria's letters, curious about the stories she shared. The walls he had built around his heart began to crumble, allowing small rays of warmth to seep through. As weeks turned into months, Tom observed with mixed emotions as Ethan slowly began to open up to Maria. He noticed how Ethan's eyes would light up when he received a letter from her or how he eagerly recounted a phone conversation they had shared. Though Tom felt a pang of jealousy, he could not deny the positive shift in Ethan's behavior. One evening, after tucking Ethan in, Tom sat on the porch, lost in thought. He realized that Maria's relentless perseverance was helping Ethan heal in ways he could not have imagined. The anger and confusion that had clouded Ethan's eyes for so long were gradually giving way to curiosity and acceptance. Taking a deep breath, Tom made a decision. The next day, he called Maria and suggested they meet to discuss how they could work together for Ethan's sake. Maria agreed eagerly, her voice full of gratitude. They met at a quiet cafe, both nervous yet determined. During their conversation, they found common ground in their love for Ethan and their desire to see him thrive. Tom shared insights into Ethan's daily life, while Maria offered ideas on how to incorporate elements of her heritage into Ethan's upbringing. Together, they began to develop a co-parenting approach that prioritized Ethan's emotional well-being. They coordinated schedules to ensure Ethan had quality time with both of them. Tom invited Maria to school events and sports games, while Maria included Tom in special outings she planned for Ethan. This united front did not go unnoticed by Ethan. He observed how Tom and Maria worked together, how they communicated respectfully, and how they both showered him with love and attention. This united front strengthened Ethan's trust in both of them. As spring blossomed in the city, Ethan's heart began to thaw towards Maria. With Tom's gentle encouragement, Ethan agreed to spend more time with his biological mother. Their first outing was to a local park, where they walked side by side, their steps hesitant yet hopeful. Eager to connect with her son, Maria asked Ethan about his hobbies. His eyes sparkled when he mentioned his love for singing in the school choir. Really? She exclaimed, her face lighting up. Music has always been my passion too. Ethan's curiosity replaced the fatigue in his eyes. Do you sing? He asked. Maria nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. I do sing opera. Ethan's eyes widened in amazement. Wow, that's cool. Can you teach me something? Maria's heart raced at his request. Over the following weeks, she introduced Ethan to the world of music and opera. They spent afternoons listening to classical compositions, with Maria explaining the stories behind each piece. Ethan was fascinated by the power of voices and the emotions they conveyed. During one of their sessions, Maria taught Ethan the art of simple harmony. As they sang together, their voices blending in perfect harmony, Maria felt tears prick her eyes. This was the connection she had longed for all these years. Ethan also began to open up more. He shared stories about school, friends, and things he enjoyed doing with Tom. Maria listened intently, cherishing every detail her son shared. One day, while they were having ice cream at the park, Ethan surprised Maria by asking about her childhood. As she recounted stories from her youth, they discovered shared traits: a love for chocolate, a fear of storms, and a tendency to laugh uncontrollably at silly jokes. With each meeting, the bond between Ethan and Maria grew stronger. The initial awkwardness gave way to a comfortable familiarity. Ethan began to look forward to their time together, eagerly sharing his experiences and seeking Maria's advice on various matters. As their relationship deepened, Maria felt a growing need to be open about her past and her son. After careful consideration and discussions with Tom, she decided to hold a press conference to formally introduce Ethan as her child. Thank you all for being here today, Maria said, her voice steady. I have an important announcement to make. Many years ago, I made a difficult decision that has haunted me ever since. I placed my newborn son for adoption. A collective sigh rippled through the crowd. Maria continued, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Recently, through a series of events that can only be described as miraculous, I have been reunited with my son Ethan. The cameras flashed and reporters began shouting questions, but Maria raised her hand, signaling for silence. I know you all have many questions, but I ask for your understanding and respect. Ethan is a young boy who deserves privacy and a normal life. I will not be sharing details about him or his adoptive family. Maria's voice grew stronger as she continued, what I will say is this, I am profoundly grateful for the chance to be a part of Ethan's life. I want to thank his adoptive father for raising him with love and dedication. Together, we are committed to doing what is best for Ethan. As the press conference concluded, Maria's publicist fielded questions, carefully deflecting those that could infringe on Ethan's privacy. Maria left the podium with a lighter heart but her mind racing with the implications of her announcement. In the days that followed, the media buzzed with the story. Headlines proclaimed, opera star reunites with long-lost son, and Maria Donovan's hidden past revealed. Despite the media frenzy, Maria stayed focused on what truly mattered, her relationship with Ethan and ensuring his well-being. After Maria's public announcement, Ethan's world was turned upside down. The once quiet neighborhood where he lived with Tom became a hub of activity, with reporters and curious onlookers seeking a glimpse of the famous child of the opera singer. Overwhelmed by the sudden attention, Ethan struggled to understand why so many strangers were interested in him. At school, his classmates bombarded him with questions and some even asked for his autograph. Ethan felt confused and out of place. Tom noticed Ethan's distress and acted immediately. He worked closely with Maria to create a protective bubble around Ethan. They hired security personnel to keep the reporters at bay and instructed Ethan's school to implement strict privacy measures. We need to make sure Ethan feels safe, Tom told Maria during one of their many phone calls. This is too much for a child his age. Maria wholeheartedly agreed. You're right, Tom. We'll do whatever it takes to give him a normal life. Together, they developed a plan to shield Ethan from the pressures of his newfound fame. Tom took extra precautions when dropping Ethan off at school, ensuring no paparazzi were around. He also collaborated with the school principal to create a safe environment for Ethan. When things became overwhelming at home, Tom made sure to keep Ethan's routine as normal as possible. He limited Ethan's exposure to news and social media, aiming to protect him from the constant chatter about his family situation. Remember, buddy, Tom said one evening as they sat on the couch, you're still the same Ethan. Nothing has changed about who you are. Ethan looked at Tom with worried eyes. But everyone keeps looking at me differently now, Dad. Tom pulled Ethan into a tight hug. I know it's hard, but we'll get through this together. Your mom and I are here for you no matter what. As weeks turned into months, Ethan slowly began to adjust to his new reality. The initial shock of the media frenzy faded, and with Tom and Maria's unwavering support, Ethan began to find his balance in this new chapter of his life. One sunny afternoon, while sitting in the yard with Tom, he looked up at his father with curious eyes. Dad, is it okay if I start enjoying spending time with Mom too? Tom's heart swelled with pride and love. He knelt beside Ethan and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Of course, buddy. It's more than okay, it's wonderful. Ethan's face brightened with relief. Really? You're not mad? Tom shook his head, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Not at all, Ethan. I'm happy you're getting to know your mom. You have so much love to give, and now you have two parents to share it with. Over time, Ethan's relationship with Maria blossomed. They discovered a shared passion for music and art, spending afternoons painting together or listening to Maria's favorite operas. Ethan began to appreciate the beauty in having two distinct yet intertwined parts of his identity. Tom and Maria, once uncertain about how to navigate their roles in Ethan's life, developed a deep mutual respect. They frequently met to discuss Ethan's well-being and future, setting aside any past tensions for the sake of their son. During one of these meetings, Maria turned to Tom with gratitude shining in her eyes. I can't thank you enough for raising Ethan with so much love and care, Maria said, her voice trembling with emotion. You've given him a foundation that I could never have provided on my own. Tom's smile was warm, filled with a profound sense of shared purpose. And you're giving him a connection to his roots that I couldn't offer. We're both important to him, Maria. I'm just glad we can work together for Ethan's happiness. As Ethan grew more comfortable with his unique family situation, he began to see it as a blessing rather than a burden. He had two loving parents who prioritized his needs, and a story that was uniquely his own. Entering adolescence, Ethan's musical talent began to bloom. Maria introduced him to the world of classical music, and he was drawn to the piano. His nimble fingers danced across the keys, creating melodies that touched the hearts of those who listened. One evening, while Ethan practiced in Maria's living room, she approached him with a glimmer of excitement in her eyes. "Ethan, I have incredible news," she said, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. "Westbrook Academy of Music has an opening for the next semester. It's one of the most prestigious music schools in the country, and I think you'd be perfect for it." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise and excitement. "Really? Do you think I'm good enough?" Maria's pride was palpable. "More than good enough, dear. Your talent is extraordinary." The idea of attending such a renowned school filled Ethan with a mix of exhilaration and anxiety. He couldn't wait to share the news with Tom, but as he thought more about it, a knot formed in his stomach. Later that night, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, pushing his dinner around his plate. Tom noticed Ethan's distraction and gently asked, "What's on your mind, buddy?" Ethan took a deep breath and explained the opportunity Maria had presented. As he spoke, he observed Tom's expression closely, noting a flicker of concern in his father's eyes. Tom listened intently, his heart swelling with pride for Ethan's achievements, yet aching at the thought of his son being far away. When Ethan finished, Tom reached across the table and took his hand. "This is an amazing opportunity, Ethan. I'm so proud of you." Ethan managed a small smile, but his voice was laced with uncertainty. "But..." Tom sighed softly. "Nothing. This is your decision and I'll support you no matter what. I just want you to be happy." Despite Tom's encouraging words, Ethan could see the worry in his father's eyes. The thought of leaving home and being away from the man who had raised and loved him unconditionally weighed heavily on Ethan. Over the following days, he found himself torn between his passion for music and his deep connection with Tom. He spent hours at the piano, losing himself in the music, but each time he finished, he was reminded of the difficult choice ahead. As the summer days grew shorter, Ethan made his decision with a blend of excitement and apprehension. He told Tom and Maria that he wanted to study at the Westbrook Academy of Music. The pride in Tom's eyes was unmistakable, though his smile carried a touch of sadness. "I'm so proud of you, son," Tom said, pulling Ethan into a tight embrace. "You're going to do amazing things." Maria clapped her hands, her eyes sparkling. "Oh, Ethan, this is wonderful news. We'll make sure you have everything you need." The weeks leading up to Ethan's departure were a whirlwind of preparation. Tom and Maria worked together, setting aside their differences to ensure Ethan's transition was as smooth as possible. They helped him pack, bought school supplies, and even made a trip to visit the campus together. On the day Ethan left for Westbrook, Tom and Maria took him to the airport. As they stood at the security checkpoint, Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. He hugged Tom tightly, whispering, "I love you, Dad. Thank you for everything." Tom's voice was choked with emotion as he replied, "I love you too, buddy. Remember, you can always come home." Ethan then turned to Maria, who enveloped him in a warm embrace. "You're going to shine, my dear," she said softly. "We'll be cheering you on every step of the way." As Ethan passed through security, he glanced back one last time to see Tom and Maria standing side by side, waving goodbye. In that moment, he felt incredibly fortunate to have two parents who loved him so deeply. At Westbrook, Ethan threw himself into his studies. The challenging curriculum took him to new heights, and he thrived in the competitive yet supportive environment. His natural talent, combined with the work ethic Tom had instilled in him and the passion for music he shared with Maria, helped him rise quickly to the top of his class. As the holiday season approached, Ethan returned home for a long-awaited visit. The moment he stepped off the plane, he was enveloped in a warm hug from Tom and Maria, who had come to pick him up together. The drive home was filled with animated conversations as Ethan shared stories about his experiences at Westbrook Academy. Tom beamed with pride while Maria listened intently, her eyes glistening with joy. That evening, the three of them sat together in Tom's cozy living room, the twinkling lights of the Christmas tree casting a soft glow. Ethan looked at his parents, feeling a wave of love and gratitude. "You know," he began softly, "I never thought I'd have this, both of you here together." Tom reached out and squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it?" Maria nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "It certainly does. Ethan, I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for the pain I caused you. But seeing you now, the wonderful young man you've become, I'm so grateful for the second chance we've been given." Ethan smiled at his birth mother. "I'm grateful too, Mom. It wasn't easy at first, but I'm glad we found each other." Tom cleared his throat, emotion thick in his voice. "I remember the day I found you, Ethan. I was so scared, but deep down I knew we were meant to be a family. And look at us now." They sat together in a comfortable silence for a moment, each reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point, the challenges they'd faced, the tears they'd shed, and the love that had ultimately brought them together. Ethan looked from Tom to Maria, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over him. "You know," Ethan began, "I used to worry about where I belonged, but now I realize I belong here with both of you. You're my family in every sense that matters." Maria reached out and took Tom's hand, then Ethan's. "We've all learned so much about love and forgiveness. I'm so proud of the family we've become." Tom nodded, his eyes glistening. "Family isn't always about blood. It's about the people who stand by you, who love you no matter what. And that's what we are." As they sat there, hands joined and hearts full, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had brought them to this moment of unity and love. They were a family not just by blood or by law, but by the enduring power of love and forgiveness. That night, the Grand Opera House buzzed with excitement as the audience settled into their plush velvet seats. Tom and Ethan sat side by side in the front row, both dressed in their finest suits. Ethan fidgeted with his tie, a mix of nerves and anticipation coursing through him. Tom leaned in and whispered, "Are you okay, buddy?" Ethan nodded, managing a small smile. "Yes, just excited and a little nervous for Mom." Tom gave Ethan's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "She'll be amazing. She always is." As the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, a hush fell over the crowd. Maria appeared on stage, her presence commanding and ethereal in her flowing dress. When she began to sing, her voice soared through the opera house, rich and powerful. Ethan sat transfixed, his eyes never leaving his mother's form. He felt a swell of pride in his chest, watching her perform with such grace and skill. Looking at Tom, he saw the same pride mirrored in his father's eyes. Throughout the performance, Ethan marveled at the journey that had brought them all to this moment. He thought of the trials they had faced, the tears and laughter, and the love that had finally united them. When Maria hit the triumphant final note of her aria, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Ethan and Tom leapt to their feet, clapping and cheering louder than anyone else in the opera house. After the performance, they waited in the lobby for Maria. When she appeared, still in her stage costume and makeup, her face lit up upon seeing them. She rushed over, enveloping Ethan and Tom in a warm embrace. "You were incredible, Mom," Ethan said, his voice choked with emotion. Maria smiled at him and then looked at Tom with gratitude. "Thank you both for being here. It means everything to me." Tom's smile was warm. "We wouldn't have missed this for the world." As they turned to leave, Ethan found himself walking between Tom and Maria. He reached out, taking each of their hands in his. Together, the three of them stepped out of the opera house and into the crisp night air, united as a family and ready to face whatever the future held. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment below, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. See you in the next video.